Putin just recently stated that Russian jets with hypersonic missiles are patrolling over Black Sea. And how capable are these jets?
Well, the jets are basically, it's modified MiG-31, which is one of the fastest planes in the world, and it's an extremely capable interceptor, probably the best in the world, actually. But it was modified to carry a single Kinzhal hypersonic aeroballistic missile. So the task of this plane, which is, again, as I already stated, it's extremely fast, to basically accelerate itself beyond Mach 2, which it can do really fast because it has a very powerful engines, and basically launch this missile, Kinzhal, from this speed, which allows the basically operation of the whatever the propulsion of the Kinzhal is, a ramjet or something like that. And yeah, it allows it to fly in excess of 2,000 kilometer range. And that was primarily, Putin specifically stated it, that deployment of the two carrier battle groups, of the US Navy carrier battle groups to Eastern Mediterranean, made us do it to make sure that they don't do anything stupid. But then, of course, there is another kind of positive development from this perspective, is the fact that at Mach 9, the Kinzhal can cover 1,200 kilometers in about 6 minutes. So when you patrol over the Black Sea in MiG-31, you actually can cover deep into Ukraine, actually whole area of Ukraine. And that means that suddenly, whatever Ukraine does, especially in big, for example, trying to launch whatever the remaining aircraft they have to launch, the Storm Shadow missiles or something like that, suddenly you have the time, reaction time for Ukrainians, which is very short, because at 600 kilometers, it takes 3 minutes to Kinzhal to cover it. And then you are not even able to warm up your jet engines, whatever you have there, and suddenly you have the strike on the airfield. So, and before that, anything what was, taken off on the Russian side, immediately American intelligence and, was reporting to Ukraine. Now it's very difficult to report anything. Once it's launched, that's it. You can count minutes. You better run, so. There you go. That's another kind of benefit of all that. So, as they say, two birds with one shot,
Ukrainians are reporting that Russians are using mixed tactics against Ukrainians. What do they mean by these mixed tactics?
I don't know what Ukrainians mean, but Russia conducts a full-blown combined arms multi-domain operation. And this is a modern tactics, and it's not a secret that Russians also are not even in rush, because they are basically doing their test trials of the most advanced weapon systems. And Russia's general staff, headed by the Army General Gerasimov, is actually shaping the Russian new armed forces, which will dominate basically their environment and be probably, arguably, the best armed forces in the world until at least 2050, using the new generation of the weapons, new generation of new type of tactics and things of this nature. So, and of course, it goes without saying, operational planning is very, very improved, let's put it this way. And that's what is happening. How Ukrainians assess it, whatever is left of the armed forces of Ukraine. Russia obviously uses all arsenal of her conventional weapons, and she will continue to do so until the final results, so to speak, are signed and sealed. And that's what I think they mean. Russia has an immense arsenal of weapons.
There is a report that Aeroflot and Rosatom, I'm pronouncing it correctly.
Rosatom,
Rosatom, and they will produce spare parts for foreign aircrafts. These are two companies?
Aeroflot is airline. It's huge airline still. It used to be the only Soviet airline. Now, of course, it's the largest out of many Russian airlines. But because Russian airlines, they continue to operate number of the Airbus and Boeing aircraft. And of course, both Boeing and Airbus, under the pressure from their respective governments, stop any technical support for them. Rosatom is, if you look attentively what Rosatom is, it's an industrial and scientific monster. It dwarfs most of the companies in the world. And it's capable, it has many divisions ranging from the direct building of the nuclear power station, which, well, it's Rosatom occupies half of the world's market of the nuclear power stations. That tells you something. And it has many divisions which develop things. For example, Russia's composite material industry has been literally built anew from ground zero by Rosatom. Russia produces her own carbon fibers, all kinds of things which go into the modern aircraft production, and not only aircraft. So Rosatom, with its immense scientific and industrial capabilities, is capable to replicate pretty much any part for the engine or any spare part for any Western aircraft. And it will be in no way worse, if not better, than the quality, in terms of quality, than what, for example, if you talk about engines, what General Electric, what Pratt and Whitney produce. So once the parts break, which they always do, it's normal thing for them, technology when it's being used often, you need to have spare parts. And Rosatom is capable to produce it or through its own divisions. And guess what? Aeroflot, of course, operates primarily long distances 777, Boeing's 777s, and it has quite a few of Airbus and Boeing 737. And so now that Rosatom is into it, so there will be no problem of basically using those aircraft until they retire, and the ramping up, which is happening as we speak, ramping up of the Tu-214 and of course MS-21 happens, and they will be substituted, those basically retiring Airbus and Boeing aircraft, they will be substituted by the indigenous Russian aircraft. So that's pretty much the plan, and it works. And and don't forget, many Boeing, Aeroflot is using quite a bit in its fleet the number of the Sukhoi Superjets, which also use the SAM-146, which is joint venture between Snecma and Safran. It now is called Safran, French Safran, and Russian firms to produce the engine. Now Russia produces its own engines, and that's pretty much it. It's to keep the air fleet of Russia operational.
These new funds that Biden is asking for, he's calling a smart investment in Ukraine. How does it look like right now, the battle between Ukraine and Russia?
Russia is finishing off now the third Ukrainian army. So, I'm laughing, but of course it's a tragedy because we're looking at catastrophic losses on the Ukrainian side. But there is another issue, of course, behind all that. It's the fact that you might not know this, but actually, Ukrainian Defense Ministry yesterday called on accepting the people with amputations as the result of the missing limbs as being partially fit to fight. This tells you what is happening, okay? And of course, they now made everybody, including women, to register in military commissariats. They are preparing probably last-ditch massive mobilization. I don't think so it's going to help at all. And the meat basically attacks, so to speak, that's how they are called by Russians, continue, and it's over. It's pretty much over militarily. It's just that Russians sit now and decide how far do we want to go now. As simple as that. and how much, how much of Ukraine we want to have left, so that's pretty much it.
They were talking that the Zelensky administration is fighting the corruption in Ukraine. Ukrainian media just announced that 1/3 of humanitarian aid allegedly sent to military units disappeared in Ukraine. The Zelensky administration is participating in this corruption, or they're trying to fight against this corruption in Ukraine?
Well, Zelensky is doing the last circles before being flushed down the toilet. He knows this, and because of that, because his whole idea, and you have to understand the intellectual level of the so-called Ukrainian elites. They strongly believe that America and the West will come and help them, give them all money, So, I mean, these are people who are really not mentally adequate for the current situation. And obviously, it's all about money. It's all about how much they will get from the United States or from the European Union. And Zelensky needs to constantly show something which, in their opinion, convinces, for example, US Congress, which has the power of the purse, to actually provide more funds. That's the only thing. And once the United States reacts to and begins to say openly that, oh yeah, there's a huge corruption, which it is. Ukraine is the most corrupt country in the world, most likely. And they need to show that, oh yeah, we're fighting the corruption. Well, guess what? Zelensky is the part of the problem, and his circle of people who are thieves, basically, So how many villas and mansions does Zelensky have, And it's basically, it's in the open, everybody knows this, but you know what? Considering the intellectual level in Washington, D.C. or in Brussels, which is not much higher than that in Ukraine. So yeah, they kind of try to present themselves, play this game. But reality is United States got itself a new state, which is called Ukraine, and it supports it, because once the funds stop flowing there, it's over not for the armed forces of Ukraine. They are destroyed as it is. It's over for the Ukraine as a state, as the so-called nation state, whatever is left of it. And then that's what Kremlin sits and just basically decides what to do with the rest of it, So, and the United States, of course, is now very much interested of throwing Ukraine at the European, so to speak, balance. But Europeans themselves, I mean, they are not what they try to present themselves economically. They never were. And when you look at this is like, yeah, sure. So if they need, tomorrow they start, what, you need to, do whatever to convince US Congress, they will declare this campaign and will do whatever is, works for convincing, while doing absolutely nothing, apart from the fact that Ukraine is split among several clans. And Zelensky better be nice to those Nazi elements, because he knows, I mean, if he's not nice, he will be killed. So it's a complex mess, so to speak. And in this particular case, as I already stated, if you need to know, tomorrow to declare that you build the manned mission to Mars, and if Kiev regime in Kiev will think that it will provide funds, they will declare that. They will do nothing about it, but they will declare that, we're building spaceship to fly to Mars, and that's what it is.
As we see the US foreign policy, they are so focused right now on Israel, on what's going on in Israel. It seems that this excitement to help, to support Ukraine is fading away. Do you think that the Zelensky administration is understanding what's going on right now?
Oh, of course they understand, of course. And even a few days ago, the situation with all those 155 millimeter shells, which were supposed to go to Ukraine, whatever left of them, they went to Israel. And they do understand that, but you see, that's the point. It doesn't matter what the United States does anymore with Ukraine. They can send whatever the tanks and aircraft, they all will be destroyed by Russians. And once the flow of funds stops, first, Zelensky cannot go for negotiations. He will be killed immediately by Nazi element. And Russians already pretty much stated clearly that our final objective is, of course, the removal of the Nazi regime in Kiev. So that's the point. Western media trying to cover up for a catastrophe which happened to them, and it is catastrophe for NATO. It is catastrophe for the United States. It is much bigger than Afghanistan. Afghanistan was a huge PR effect, but this is completely different. So they talk about now some negotiations, but they forgot. Negotiations usually takes at least two parties. Russia is not interested in negotiations as it is. As Mr. Medvedev, the deputy secretary of the, secretary of the Security Council, Russia Security Council stated, no, not yet. The same was stated by Putin and Lavrov, that no, the conditions are not there for negotiations. It's Russia who decides if she wants to negotiate, but Russian negotiations are going to be merely dictating the articles of the unconditional surrender, period. And there will be no allowed any kind of the Western influence other than if they want to help financially to restore whatever have been broken. Sure, why not? But there will be nothing like what Western media primarily and pundits try to present, because when they say that, oh yeah, there are ideas about negotiations and everything, it's the euphemism for a catastrophe, because military catastrophe already happened and political catastrophe is beginning to take shape. And now we had this event with Israel and Gaza and genocide, which is Israel is pretty much trying to do there, to conduct there. So obviously the attention all turned to this 145 square miles of the territory in Gaza Strip, and that's about it. And considering the fact that US Congress is fully in the pockets of the American-Israeli Political Action Committee, and obviously with the immensely powerful Israeli and Jewish lobby in the United States, Zelensky can only now, I don't know what he's going to do. Doesn't look good for him.
The Russians are talking about sending these Ukrainian soldiers that were captured by Russians to re-education camp. They already started to send them, or they're going to send them. And what's the reason for that?
Well, there are two types of POWs in Russia. Some of them just regular folks from armed forces of Ukraine. And of course, they're Ukrainian nationalists to a degree, with different degrees. And how they will be dealt with, I don't think so anybody going to send them to Siberia or anything. Most likely they will be used at the restoring some of the Ukrainian infrastructure after the hostilities will kind of wind down. But there is a second part, which are, of course, Nazis. Those are devoured. And no, there will be no, how to say it, people immediately think about Gulag or something like that. Russia doesn't have any Gulag. But all of them, all those people associated with such as Azov Brigade and the other Nazi and GUR and SBU structures, which are basically fanatical Nazis, they're not going to be re-educated. What was going to happen, which is happening already, the investigative committee and Office of the Military Procurator and others, they will be deciding, basically carrying out judicial procedure, which carrying out the investigation and assigning basically punishment, as is done pretty much in any punitive system in the world. In other matter that there most likely only a few of them will face the court of, like the judges court, for example, like during the public trials, which I think so should be held, especially for most, vile people who committed atrocities. But most of them will be basically given the punishment and sent to the most likely their strict, what is called colonies of this with the strict regime. Some of them will end up in some kind of the prison terms, but they will be carrying out the punishment, the sentences which will be imposed on them. And of course, they will vary. Most likely, some will be just simply SS sympathizers, but those who have been established as participating in the atrocities against civilians, against Russian POWs, something. That is a whole other story. And again, do not forget, and Investigative Committee of Russia was already basically on the record. The war crimes tribunals are being prepared. And believe me, once they will start, there will be many American and Western public figures who will be also charged. They will be charged. It doesn't mean that you will be able to bring them, but they will be charged with the crimes against humanity and war crimes. So there you go. And so we'll see. But no, I mean, the eradication, no. Azov and Nazis, you cannot eradicate them. They need to just basically be locked up, and the key thrown out. That's pretty much it. As for the other, as I already stated, soldiers from armed forces of Ukraine, again, there are many industrial and civilian objects to be restored and rebuilt in Ukraine. They will be used there, then will be let go, just back to their families and things of this nature.
What happened to Wagner Group? What do we know about them?
Wagner, as it existed during Prigozhin years and Mr. Utkin's years, was nothing more than organized criminal group, well armed and well trained. And again, much of what West knows about and partially in Russia about Wagner was primarily propaganda financed by Mr. Prigozhin himself and his structures. He is his former criminal, and so but Wagner, as we know, it doesn't exist anymore. It was broken up. Now, people who of Wagner and those people who fought and who never knew what actually Prigozhin was trying to commit when he committed this mutiny, they took the oath and have been absorbed as part of some kind of the private military companies, but they have oath not to some Wagner group, but oath to the Russian state, and they have been contracted by the Russian Defense Ministry. And there's a number of the groups like that have been formed, and those people who are part of this new, whatever it's called, let's call it Wagner 2.0, they never smeared themselves with the betrayal and mutiny. These are pretty much normal former military and present military professionals which fight in accordance to the way of the plans of the general staff. And yeah, they are now what is called state people, so to speak. Some of the Wagners have been basically sent back to their business, to attend their business in Africa, and whatever happens to them, I don't know. So, but I mean, there will be never again anything like this in Russia. There will be the use of the private military groups and contractors, which is nothing wrong with them when it's done properly. But I mean, that Wagner which we knew is gone forever, and so actually I don't majority of military professionals in Russia didn't really shed tears when Prigozhin however he got killed, so that's simple as that.
Has the Russian point of view changed considering Israel, because their support of Ukraine in this war against Russia?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Putin used to have a very friendly relationship with Bibi Netanyahu. But after Mr. Netanyahu kind of allowed the Israeli people to participate in what was happening in Ukraine, you do not betray Putin, he will never forget it. And Mr. Netanyahu miscalculated dramatically here. So Russians are sitting pretty together with China. They are waiting when this mess will kind of, sort itself out. And then they will step, because the United States lost completely any credibility with Arabs. I mean, so, many people are looking at Russia right now, So, and we'll see, but no, the relations with Israel will never be the same, granted that Israel even exists in the next 5 years, as we know it. So, because Netanyahu probably is done. He is in the geopolitical and political dead end. And that is why they still procrastinate, so to speak, with this ground operation, so to speak, because his career, I think so, is over. What happens with Israel, that's a little bit more complex.
Do you think that the US foreign policy forced him to support Ukraine, or they support Ukraine by themselves?
Both, you know, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. I'm pretty sure United States was pressuring Israel in that. But there are many people in Israel who do not like Russians at all. And they have their own designs on Ukraine. They have all kinds of bizarre religious thing going on there, you know, with all those. In this case, it's, as I already stated, it's 50-50, I think, you know. So, but again, you don't do those things when you have relations with Putin, like very, very confidential relations with Putin, and Russia was pretty much allowing Israel to bomb and attack Hezbollah assets in Syria without interfering. You see, but I don't know, it's gonna change, if not already. So it's not even if, it's when, and that's pretty much Netanyahu did it with himself.
There are two theories on this conflict in Israel. Some of the experts say that it was a huge failure in the intelligence of Israel. The other experts believe that this attack was wanted and permitted by the Netanyahu administration. What's your take on this?
Well, it's difficult for me to say on that. Obviously, there are some things which immediately point out to the possibility that it was allowed to happen, because Netanyahu and Likud party, they have those bizarre designs on, you know, on the whole Middle East. And yeah, that could be the case. But do not forget also that, and I don't know if they expected it, even if they were permitting this, there are basically this mythology, the image of the Israeli Defense Force, which was so carefully created over years as one of the best fighting forces in the world, have been tarnished dramatically. So it's they either miscalculated or who knows what it is. But the point is, if there is definitely some kind of share of the failure, no doubt about it. And obviously Hamas improved tactically, no doubt about it, and technically. So, and we saw everything what happened. And again, unlike the previous times when they would shoot like 34, as my friend Larry Johnson wrote yesterday, or 100 missiles, Katyushas, you know, those ones which they shot was 5,000, okay? And they created havoc, and they were actually hitting targets, including the IDF targets. So something changed, okay? And there you go. We have what we have today.
When you look at Israel right now, it's surrounded by Arab states, mostly Muslims. Do you see any long-term strategy on their part by these attacking? It seems to me that they're making more hatred and radicalism.
I don't think so they are good at strategy to start with, okay? No, I don't think so they really have strategy. They are acting primarily in the knee-jerk manner. And obviously, we stand right now at this point of time that once they decide to go in for the so-called ground operation, there is no doubt there will be many losses on the Israeli part. And Israel doesn't like losses. But here we might be talking about very serious losses. They will still prevail in the end, because Israel simply is technically more superior, you know, and it's superior in numbers. But the point is, if they had any strategy, that strategy was probably, if we assume that they allowed it to happen, it was obviously to save basically Netanyahu's political career. Well, if not, basically prevent him from going to jail, where he might end up, you know, going anyway. And I think so that the only idea was to ethnically cleanse Gaza, basically literally removing those 2.2 million or however many Palestinians from there, you know. So that's pretty much the extent of their strategies. Many of those so-called strategies are indeed infused with the religious fervor and all those prophecies. So, but of course, we can never forget the degree of the political cynicism and all of that, or geopolitical cynicism. They already have Arabs, basically Arab Street boiling. But of course, nobody wants the war, real war there. But who knows, if things proceed the way they proceed, eventually Arabs will have to make a choice how they really have to rearrange their policies in the whole Middle East, because it's nothing new. Listen, this proverb goes around Arab Street for a long time. Arabs, especially, like when you talk about Saudi Arabians or Qataris or whatever, Arabs want to fight for Palestine to the last Palestinian, so they're ready for Palestinians to die for that. And of course, there are many volunteers, no doubt about it. But political forces entrenched in those, important countries in the Middle East, they always were like, oh, let Palestinians sort it out. We will support, we will provide all this inflaming rhetoric, but very few of them wanted to go to war. But considering the fact that what even the King of Jordan today was speaking, about this two-state solution. And then, of course, Vladimir Putin stated about two-state solution. This is where it might be going. But again, I'm not specialist on the Middle East. Please don't quote me on that. I defer to people who are real Arabists and who know more than me in this respect. But I think so. It's two-state solution if Israel wants to survive at all in any form. Otherwise, who knows, at some point of time, even those Arabs who didn't want to fight, they will say enough is enough. And then, of course, we have the factor of Iran, and that's a whole other can of worms.
How do you see the support in Europe for the Ukraine war? It seems that this conflict in Israel is so much influencing all the countries in Europe. Is that going to bring some sort of sanity to Europe?
No, I don't believe it. I think so. Europe is pretty much done. And of course, there are certain segments of Europeans, primarily of the moderately conservative views, which understand what happens. But for the most part, European elites and public which supports them, then they're brainwashed people. And how to put it? Let me put it this way. French, if they didn't have enough, they elected Macron twice. They will elect him the third time until France disintegrates. Brussels is primarily a Muslim city now, and Germany, well, I am on the record. We can sit here and discuss about alternative for Germany, becoming stronger in polls and everything. No, in the end, Germans will go out and elect the same insane politicians. So, yeah, we might talk about, how this, Christian Democrats or Social Democrats and Scholz and Baerbock and, what have you, they will go out and vote for them again. Okay, they did it before. I don't hold any hopes for Europe anymore. And again, considering the fact that I have many friends in Europe and people who I'm a man of European culture primarily, of Western culture. And obviously looking at it, it's kind of like, what, how can you reason with the brainwashed zombies, basically, So, and I understand number of the, Europeans who suffer intellectually, morally, spiritually from seeing what is happening, but they, not those particular people, but majority of Europe chose it. They love to use this excuse that, sorry, we're not the guys who can vote and change anything. Oh, yes, you can. And I always use the same, while Trump, of course, was nothing but the, hot air balloon, but at least he was hot air balloon who was coming with their agenda. People believed it. And guess what? They voted him in the first time to be a president against all odds of the, this establishment and swamp and deep state. Another matter, he turned out to be nothing more than a TV show guy, But at least, hey, voters mattered. We went out and voted for him. So, but Europeans are not capable of doing this. I don't think so.
We've heard that China is sending 6 warships to the Middle East. It's in total coordination with Russia, in my opinion. What's the strategy on the part of Russia and China?
It's to demonstrate flag demonstration, demonstration of force, and basically it's showing the signal to Arabs, the whole area. So, did you have enough? So choose. You have, and we are good guys, and here is the demonstration for you who the bad guys are. So if you didn't have enough, you may continue to, with the same course, and you will suffer same consequences. So this is pretty much play on the contrast. Obviously, there is a coordination between China and Russia, and obviously, it is a demonstration in a sense for geopolitical purposes to contrast who the good guys are. So that's what I think it is.
Are Russian having any security plan for Ukraine? Because it's going to be problematic, seriously problematic for Russians.
Well, there will be. And again, don't forget, there are literally Ukrainian sleeper cells inside Russia. So in this particular case, it is a problem. But that's why Russia have FSB. That's why Russia has internal affairs ministry and operative services which deal with that. So it's going to be a process. It's going to be struggle, no doubt about it. There will be some diversionary acts. There will be terrorism. There will be murders and assassinations. You would expect this, sadly, but that's the way. That's the price one has to pay to overcome basically what was a horrendous, crime against humanity when basically Ukraine was forced to do what she did. And because of that, very little of it will be left. And if anything, we don't know. That's, I think, the most important point. What does Kremlin, talking about this collective Putin or whatever, how they decide? Do we want to take more of Ukraine on our balance? People say that Russians will take Kharkov and Odessa, which are Russian cities. Let me tell you, Kharkov right now is not a Russian city. Of course, there are some elements, there is some percentage of people who still remain in hiding in sense of their Russian identity. But population at large there, they hate Russia. And so, but Odessa most likely and Nikolaev, which are, classic Catherine the Great cities, Russia will take no matter what eventually. So that's what we have. And however Kremlin decides to deal with this, what can I say? I don't know. Difficult to say, but there certainly will be the decision moment when Kremlin and Russian Security Council, they say, okay, we're taking this, and then we arrange whatever the romp will be left of Ukraine. How we're going to deal with this?
Putin was recently in China. In your opinion, how big the relation between China and Russia is growing?
Well, they're growing tremendously because do not forget, Putin came from China actually with number of the first gigantic contract on the grain and other food stuff, 25.7 billion. Okay, by the end of this year, Russia and China will overcome $200 billion mutual trade, and it continues to grow. But there was a very one interesting thing which many people still don't understand how important it is. It's a few months ago, Russia simply pulled out of the China-Russian joint wide-body aircraft project, CR929. So Russia pulled out and said, you know what, we're going to be just contractors providing some parts because Russians didn't like Chinese conditions, okay? And of course, China wanted to basically not just assemble this aircraft in China, but they wanted Russian technologies transfer, which of course, key technologies, including the PD-35 engine. And Russians pulled out, But guess what? Now there is a basically the new conglomerates, so to speak, the new organization created. Evidently, Chinese had their own thinking about it, and it's joint Russian-Chinese aerospace conglomerate. $1 billion was already given to them. So I think so that will be kind of second attempt on the creation of this wide-body aircraft. Russians do not really need wide-body aircraft because they have it essentially. They have IL-86 or 96, and they have, of course, PD-35 coming up online very soon. And then you just remotorize, make some adjustments for the design of IL-96, and you have superb modern aircraft. China doesn't have it. And so now we have this kind of rearrangement, and we'll see where it's gonna take, basically, China and Russia, but we still do not know. We just know that it's gigantic. It's the military technological cooperation. Primarily, Russia basically not transferring, selling some crucial military technologies to China. What are they? I will go out on a limb here and say that there is a talk about hypersonic weapons, but there are also a number of other things related to the air forces and things of this nature. China is preparing for the war in Asia, which obviously, and around Taiwan, which United States will try to light this war up. China is not going to take Taiwan by force unless United States provokes it the same as it provoked Ukraine. But I mean, so Russia is helping China to get ready for that.
How do you see the role of India in this game of powers? Because they're trying to play both sides of the aisle, because they're playing with Americans, with Russians, with Chinese. Do they see their future with China and Russia, or they see their future with the US?
There are some certain circles in India who see their future with the United States. And there is a lot of, there's huge pro-American sentiment in India. The problem for India is now, they're pretty smart people, out there. They obviously play kind of both ways, but it's India. But the point is they are smart people there, and there are smart people there. They have to ask the question, what United States? What's going to happen to the United States? We already see what is happening to the United States. Militarily, it was exposed as the impotent, basically. Economically, it's, only fools believe in this $23 trillion gross domestic product. It's laughable, so. And China dwarfs United States economically and industrially, especially their real sector of economy. So who knows? India wants to be the superpower, at least in the Indian Ocean, and they can be. They certainly have resources, and we'll see. Difficult to say, but obviously they need to contend with the fact that BRICS. China economically absolute monster. It's gigantic. And I'm talking about the real economy. I'm not talking about services and finances. It's really those are derivatives, China has its own problems so nobody says that it doesn't. But in terms of the industrial output, it's the largest economy in the world. And by far, it dwarfs United States, really. So, and there you go. So India has to decide what it's going to do, and if it has the chance to really advance in a similar manner as China did, So we'll see. Difficult to say, difficult to forecast this.
We know that in this conflict between India and Pakistan, the US was supporting Pakistan over India. Right now, with this conflict in Israel, Pakistanis were talking about if Israel attacks Turkey, they're going to give nuclear arsenal to Turkey hitting Israel. How do you see this policy of the US in that region? Is that working out?
I don't think so. There is any competent diplomat in the State Department for the last 20 years. When you look at the products of all those Ivy League schools on, diplomacy, international relations, it's pathetic. they are uncultured, well, semi-literate people. So you won't expect them be able to, especially when you look at the think tanks and lobbies in Washington, it's laughable. These people, I mean, it's ridiculous. They won't be able to develop any sensible geopolitical concept or policy, long-term policy, because United States cannot do strategy. I'm writing the fourth book now, actually on the chapter, that they cannot do strategy, geopolitical or militarily. They think in the short terms, and all those, what is called Washington foreign policy consensus, is also the butt of the jokes. They do not understand themselves. Forget about understanding, as Sun Tzu used to say, if you know yourself, and you know your enemy, you will be, on the way of the victories. They don't know world outside. They absolutely don't. I mean, and literally, Mr. Blinken doesn't understand, for example, how world operates. But the worst part, they don't know the United States themselves. They don't know their own country, or at least what they call their own country. And so when you look at this, I mean, what policies? You have people discredited pseudo-academicians like Fukuyama still, to writing garbage, basically, pseudo-academic garbage in the, major newspaper, major magazines, or that's the level. That's the level. They don't understand how real economy works. They don't understand how cultures interact. Most of Washington, D.C., including in Pentagon, they don't understand what military power is and real 21st century warfare is. They just don't. And that's what is the most stunning about all this. We literally see the country imploding, not just economically, it's just complete cultural implosion. You look at this, and I mean, if somebody would have told me that I would be observing this 15 years ago, I would say, are you crazy? But here we are today, and it's just like, my gosh, Europe is not better. When you have such people as von der Leyen or Baerbock, I mean, it's not even funny anymore. It's like, how you gonna talk to those people? There you go. It's complete bankruptcy. It's complete. It's not just financial bankruptcy with those $33 trillion of the national debt. It's a complete bankruptcy. It's like every single American institution which we used to know. American education is a joke. I mean, if you take out the STEM, the engineering, it's still some good schools here. So the rest of it, humanities in the United States, it's not even education. It's some kind of, I don't know what it is. So same goes for the history, the way it's written. It's just, you look at judiciary, you look at every single thing, and it just ceased to work. It just ceased completely. And this is a catastrophic, basically, failure of the American statesmanship, which, well, American politics doesn't produce statesmen anymore. It produces politicians.
We don't know about the future, how the future comes, the changes in the future. But how does Russia see this opportunity of having this pipeline again connected between Russia and Germany?
We know that Putin is Germanophile. There's no doubt about it, personally. His huge personal friend is Gerhard Schröder. He actually spoke in his defense 2 days ago. And I'm pretty sure Schröder, who is his very close friend, and he has obviously some influence on Putin. And I'm pretty sure that if I would have been Schröder, I would be now telling Putin, just wait, don't judge us like harshly. Because obviously Russian society turned against Europeans dramatically, And obviously German elites it's pathetic. I mean, plus Germans, of course, did things which Russia never thought they would see again. Russians were burning German tanks on the Russian territory. This Russians will never forget. But Russians are also not very much interested in having Europe completely being basically turning into the caliphate, Islamic caliphate, or Germany being deindustrialized. It's going to happen anyway, but being deindustrialized to such a degree that it becomes the second, if not the third world country with still relatively modern infrastructure. You do not want political mass in Europe, which may give the rise to other, extremist, uber-Nazi, ideology. Although Germans have been emasculated to such a degree, I think that this time we shouldn't be worrying about that. They would prefer to be, all kinds of other, what kind of interest they would prefer. But obviously, Schroeder, being a close friend of Putin, and considering the fact that one of the lines of the Nord Stream is still intact, and as Putin himself stated, hey, just tell us, we'll just, open the valve, and it's gonna flow. It's up to Germany, okay? But let me tell you, there is a huge number of Germans, and not just Russian Germans. Those Russian Germans are coming back in droves. We're talking about German Germans, from, Munich, from Hamburg, from whatever, Western Germany, who also moving to Russia because they cannot live anymore in Germany. And is it possible to turn Germany back to sanity? As I already stated, whatever you say, but the country which has the Grüne, as the major political force, obviously it goes up and down in popularity, but it's already the huge reason to examine this nation's head, by the psychiatrist, because you cannot be normal person voting for those people who are not just globalists. I mean, they are insane. They are basically genocidal people who ready for environment, just kill half of the Germany. So, and when you look at this, so I don't think so there will ever be back normal relations between Russians and Germans. They're all fruits of the Ostpolitics by Willy Brandt. Even Helmut Schmidt, former SS officer, when he was a chancellor, he had enough courage to come and shake hands, of Brezhnev and kind of, go ahead with this. Then, of course, we had Ostpolitik. It's all gone now. And Germany will never be again the industrial power as it used to be during Angela Merkel, who was able to actually basically rob Europe just to make sure that German people live better than everybody else. And that's a complex issue, but Russia wouldn't mind selling Germany gas if it pays for it. And again, the Russians are not genocidal maniacs like it is the Brussels elites. They do not want simple Germans to die from hunger or cold, let alone cold, because freeze to death. Russians are not cruel people. And so we have to wait and see. But again, judging by what Putin said a couple of days ago, defending Schroeder, he wouldn't mind at least not to allow Germany to plunge in the complete chaos, which is actually much closer than anybody, even assume at this stage. It's a very unhappy country.